Hi, good evening and welcome to this session, everybody. Thanks for the introduction, Pabasari. I am the Deputy CTO and VP Cloud at WSO2. In this role, I am driving the cloud vision of the company and taking our company towards the next sort of level in our journey. This presentation will consist of 4 main sections. I'll be initially talking about, I'll be doing an intro and talking about the need for cloud native software engineering. And then the other speakers will give their perspectives on the journey towards cloud native, cloud migration strategies, tools and infrastructure, and so on. Yeah, let's get started. The controls are missing. Okay, getting used to this. Right. Okay. Can you guys see my screen?
Yes, Azeez.
I have to go to the previous. Those controls are missing, probably. Yeah, okay, takes some time. Okay, I want on this slide. Right. So companies, right? So let's to get started. The companies always knew that at some point they will have to digitally transform, right? But we also, always there are other priorities that come up, and then companies have been delaying their journey towards digital transformation. But then end of 2019, early 2020, COVID hit, and then reality dawned on all companies that they have to digitally transform. So COVID has become a game changer and an eye opener for most companies. And they have now realized that if they don't digitally transform now, what will happen is, they will quickly run out of business. They will go out of business. Research done by this company known as McKinsey and Company, which is an American worldwide management consulting firm, which was founded in 1926, and they provide consultancy and strategic management and advice to corporations, governments, and other organizations. So they did this research, and they found that COVID actually made this journey leapfrog by 7 years, right? So a journey of 7 years, within it basically shrunk it to a period of a few months. So like companies which could have taken 7 years to nicely pan out their journey now have to digitally transform within a very short period. You know that everything is now being done digitally, right? So in the good old days, 2 years ago, we used to have these meetups physically, but the world still continues to go about normal business, but everything is being done virtually. So if like even educational institutes, all kinds of institutes, right? Everything is being done virtually. So companies have to transform digitally, or that's going to be the end of their business. So as this famous saying goes from the Twilio CEO, Jeff Lawson, you have to, the time to transform is now. So you have to either build or your company will die, right? So I will leave that statement for now and go into the details during the rest of my slides. So like companies had this option of building or buying, but now it's like it's about building your software solution or you go out of business. Next slide, please. Like these controls go. Sorry, yeah. I think that will be better. I'll ask you to change the slides, Pabasari. So in summary, every organization has to become a software organization. So this is a very bold statement, right? So your primary business might not be an IT business, right? IT or software was just a small part of your business. Your main business is something else. You could have been a freight forwarding company or a logistics company or something like that. But now companies have started to realize that IT is not just a function where you have these guys sitting in a basement doing their thing and everybody forgets about them. This is basically a core part of their organization, right? So like some of you guys might remember the IT crowd show where these nerds sit in a dark and dark basement, and they basically like their business is to ask people to turn the computers on and off, right? So it's no longer that anymore. So IT is a game changer. Software is a game changer and a survival, an essential component in the survival and continuation of every business. Next slide, please. So, coming back to building or buying, which is now paraphrased as building or dying. So you are the expert of your business domain, right? So every business, you need to have a particular differentiator, right? So you might be in a particular industry, but what's the value that you're going to bring towards your customer compared to the competitor, right? Why should a company or a customer come to you and not go to your competitor? So that's because they come to you because of your differentiating factors, right? When it comes to the solutions that that cover your domain, right? You are the expert on that particular domain, and you are the one who knows exactly what your customers need, and you know the business domain well, and you know your differentiators. So you have to build digital experiences. So you might not be able to buy everything off the shelf, put them together, and somehow make this thing run, right? So like if you are making something, designing something unique. So you think about building your own car, right? So you can't just buy random components from different manufacturers of these different parts, put them together, and then make that into your product, right? And ship a car, right? So you have to build something unique. So of course, you will be getting components from different vendors, and you will use different technologies and so on. But at the end of the day, building this elegant, seamless solution that gives a great digital experience to your customers, it's up to you. So your organization has to invest in building those experiences. Next slide, please. So how do you go about building software or digital experiences in 2021, right? So companies have been building software and building solutions for a long time. But let's say now, what's the best way to do this in 2021? So there's a traditional way of building software, and then there is the better way, right? So a major paradigm shift has now taken place. So if you look at these logos here, like companies like Netflix, Uber, Airbnb, and so on, so they are sort of these giants, right? So they have built, or they have built solutions, or they have built the tooling and processes and so on over many years, right? So what we see now as cloud native software engineering, or cloud native best practices and so on are things, microservices architecture. So these are things that actually came out through these big companies now, which have become mainstream. So like every companies now don't have to start from scratch. So like their digital transformation journeys may have taken several years and cost them millions of dollars, cost so much of expert time and so on. But every company doesn't have to go through that pain now. We can stand on the shoulders of giants, right? So the processors, tools, technologies, methodologies that have been built are now widely available. So contemporary organizations don't have to spend as much time, effort, or money on these aspects anymore, right? So next slide, please. So now we come to cloud native software engineering. So this is the way to go in the modern era. So in a nutshell, what this means is like I always say cloud native software engineering is about building for the cloud on the cloud. So like from a developer's and technologist point of view, it's about building for the cloud on the cloud. So this statement is very important, right? Traditionally, like for the past, at least the past decade, people have been running stuff on the cloud. Many companies have been running stuff on the cloud. So the question is, have they been doing it? Have they been doing it correctly, right? So typically, you might build your software following traditional processes, test them using traditional processes, but then you run them on the cloud, right? So there's a disconnect there. So you can see that by the time you start actually running your software on the cloud, it might be too late. But what if you started developing on the cloud itself? So rather than developing these solutions on your machine, what if you have access to this cloud environment where you can directly connect to it, you build on that, you are using the cloud best practices, tools, and so on. So what could happen is like you would immediately start seeing issues, right, which you might have seen if you use the traditional way, maybe several days or weeks down the line. So as a developer, like immediately when you're developing a particular feature, you develop it in a cloud native manner, right? So you're running it remotely, you build it for scaling, and so on. So this is the concept of, in a nutshell, cloud native software engineering has many aspects. So this is something that I like to highlight from a development experience point of view, right? So like having your development environment on the cloud is an essential item in this journey. And then of course you need to have multiple environments. Sorry, I'm on the same slide. Baba, can you go back to the same slide? Yeah. So obviously, you have multiple environments, dev test staging. So these have to be well connected through well-defined processes, CI/CD processes, build pipelines, right? So you simply it's a seamless. Like I would also like position this as a factory. Yeah, right. Your product or your feature is your product. It goes through these different stages in the pipeline. So you can think of it as a conveyor belt where it goes from one stage to the other, and finally it gets shipped out, right? So another important thing when you're building on the cloud is leveraging cloud services and APIs. So traditionally, when you build software, you don't build everything yourself, right? So you use third-party libraries. For example, if you are a Java developer, you use Log4j, which is a very common library used by most developers. Then similarly, when you build on the cloud, APIs is sort of a first-class thing, right? The unit of reusability is APIs. So you don't build everything. So if you look for APIs that can get the job done for you, right? So it can be APIs that are provided by some service provider, can be Salesforce or something like that if you're building a solution based on that, or it could be APIs provided by your cloud platform vendor. Like for example, if you're using Azure, you rely on the Azure APIs, right? So APIs are sort of a fundamental part of this. So then even when it comes to exposing your systems to the outside world, again, you think of APIs. If you want to integrate to on-premises systems, you think of it as APIs. So I will talk about that in the next slide. Next slide, please. So how do you go about transforming your organization and your projects, right? You can broadly classify organizations and projects into two categories, right? Greenfield and brownfield. A greenfield project is where you start with a clean slate. So this is sort of a ideal situation you would like to be in, because now, from day zero, you can start with cloud native best practices, and you don't have any legacy baggage to carry over, right? So if you are a startup, or if your organization is creating a completely new project or something like that, you have the luxury of following the greenfield strategy. But the thing is, like, the reality is, they are like, not all organizations and projects are fortunate enough to start with a greenfield. So you already have digital assets in your company which are delivering value, right? But now you need to now get on this particular cloud native bus or train, and you need to move towards new ways of doing things. How do you go about doing that, right? So these are like some of the fundamental issues that you're going to face, because you have your digital assets which are already delivering lots of value. You can't throw them away, right? So you need to utilize them. There are different ways in which you can do this. So you could, like, run these systems in parallel. So your newer solutions and your existing system, your brownfield existing solutions could run in parallel. You integrate them through APIs, you run them side by side, and then, like, you might also think about gradually, decommissioning your legacy systems, in which case you can use things like the strangler pattern. So according to the strangler pattern, what you do is, like, you basically take your legacy system apart piece by piece, right? So you identify a particular module or a functionality, and you might replace that with a microservice, right? So then you integrate them through APIs. So gradually, you remove these bits and pieces, and finally you have your complete solution architected in a modern way, like according to the microservices paradigm and so on. So there are strategies like that which you can follow if you are a brownfield organization. Next slide, please. Yeah, so in my perspective, the most important aspects related to transforming your organization into a cloud native organization are people, processes, and technology. So this is one way of looking at it. So this is my perspective. So when it comes to people, you organize them into autonomous, small, multidisciplinary teams that own everything. So, like, these are teams, small teams. So the popular term coined by Amazon, the two pizza team concept, right? So these are teams, like, traditionally we used to organize teams according to their expertise, right? So you have the UI experts, you have the business logic experts, you have the database guys, you have the ops guys, right? So that's basically structuring your teams in a horizontal manner. What happens is, according to that, like, we have this Conway's law. So then because of the communication gaps, you would not be developing the ideal solution. So what you do is you go with a vertical structuring of your team, right? So where you have where people are given the autonomy and the responsibility of implementing a particular solution, right? So they own it end to end, from the time of conceptualizing to developing that feature, testing it, and running it in production, supporting it. So you create these vertical teams where you have people from you having a multidisciplinary team which has full stack developers, UI developers, ops personnel, and so on. So that's sort of the way to go when it comes to structuring teams. And then when it comes to processes, needless to say, microservices style has become the de facto standard for architecting a cloud native systems, right? So you have to follow that for style, scope, and composability. And then from day one, you need to think about auto scaling and resiliency, right? So like, again, this comes with, these are characteristics of microservices based systems, right? Pet versus cattle. So these systems can come and go. They will be very dynamic. So you don't expect a particular process to run for several years, unlike in the olden days, right? So they are very dynamic. So even if they fail, the systems will recover. So these things will be covered by the other speakers as well in their sessions. And of course, you APIs, right? I mentioned this earlier as well, API first design. So you think about how external parties are going to integrate with your solution, or you might have multiple systems, subsystems that you design which talk to each other. So what are the APIs? So you start with designing those APIs, right? And then when it comes to technology, we always knew that automating everything has to be done. But I need to emphasize that even more when it comes to moving towards cloud native engineering, right? So the security checks, you need to put in the anomaly detection, rapid deployment, continuous feedback, which will improve your processes. And then, you have to observe every little bit. So that's extremely important. So I have a slide on that. I will talk about that later. My next slide is on that. And obviously, you have to think about securing everything, right? So when you're running in a cloud environment, there could be like many aspects that are shared. So security, how do you manage your secrets, right? So you need to, are you going to keep them in a particular, are you going to keep them in the database, or are you going to use a vault, right? So there are best practices that you need to think about. So like all of these have their benefits, as well as there are certain costs that you have to incur. Next slide, please. Yeah, so going into coming from the continuing from the previous slide on observability, monitoring, and analysis. You need to observe everything when you're running a cloud native solution. So like broadly, you can categorize this into two different parts. So user behavior, which is depicted by the business metrics, and then you have system metrics, which are related to the underlying system. So like these are much lower level things related to failures, response times, things like that. So you need to observe each of these things. And then you have to use the results derived from observability to continuously improve. So like it doesn't make sense to observe something and then not do anything about it, right? So this is a feedback loop. You're observing in order to feed that information back into the system, analyze it, and deliver more value, right? So you look at what parts of your system are becoming a bottleneck at a particular time, right? So if you look at some system metrics, you might find, okay, at a particular time, some process becomes slow, right? So then you have the data to trace this now, right? Because you are observing the system end to end. So there is a particular bottleneck in this particular module, which is somewhere down the chain, right? So might be one of the microservices. So you can now feed that back into the system and then look at improving those things. So there is this popular saying when it comes to DevOps: if it isn't monitored, it isn't in production. So in order to consider anything, so if every single feature or whatever that you put into production, you need to have some insights into that, right? So if you are not doing that, that's basically not suitable to be in production. So like one other thing that I want to emphasize is, okay, like people like you have monitoring and alerting, right? So people talk about monitoring and alerting. Again, like alerting should be something that happens, very rarely, not something that's very common. So it's like crying wolf, right? So if you keep on getting alerts, you might just learn to ignore them, which can cause catastrophic problems later. So what has to be done is, you try to build in self-healing as much as possible into your system. So your system itself, it's monitoring itself, and then it takes remedial actions when it sees some failures. And then if the system can't auto-correct something, at that point, you alert, and then a human will get involved, right? That's basically something that you need to think about, alerting for every little thing, and getting human involvement in to sort those out is generally not a good idea when it comes to building these new systems. Right, next slide, please. Yeah, so another important aspect that you have to think about is continuous integration and continuous delivery, right? So when it comes to like traditional software engineering, you had these fixed release cycles, right? Where you do quarterly releases, 6-month release every 6 months, every month or something like that. So that used to be the traditional way of delivering software. But the modern way of doing that is, you implement small changes, and then you check in that code into repositories frequently, and you have all the mechanisms to make sure that things are not breaking. You guys know this thing, right? You have the testing, and you have different, the test pyramid, right? You do all kinds of testing, and you ensure your code is good to be checked into the production repositories, and then once it's checked in, you can even deliver this, or you can deploy this into production several times a day. So this used to be something, I think like about 10 years ago, we were like amazed when we heard this, like 10 or 12 years ago, because like it was only the large companies that used to do this. We heard about Facebook delivering features or getting features into their system several times a day and things like that. It used to be these large players, but now even like any company can get into this and should get into this. So if you need to bring in the proper processes, and you need to bring in the proper discipline, right? So that's continuous delivery.